Picking a mortgage lender absolutely sucks. We don't know what we don't know. So how do you know if you're choosing the right person to do your mortgage and possibly the biggest transaction? Well, I'm going to give you some tips on what you need to follow so that you can make the best decision for yourselves. Tip number one, usually the lender that your real estate agent recommends to you can be a good place to start. However, I do want you to prepare some questions that you might want to grab a pencil right now so that you can write this down. Okay, so here are some of the questions you want to ask the mortgage lender and maybe even ask the realtor. Number one is, how long have you known this mortgage person for? And how long have you been doing business with them? The reason that question is important is because in our industry, we get this all the time where we get mortgage vendors coming to us seeking our business. And there are times that realtors will get a good vibe off of somebody and hope and pray that that is the person that can close on your home loan. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean they've had an established relationship, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that person will be successful. So that is a very imperative question to ask, because if they have not had a good relationship or haven't had one that was long enough with a proven track record of having some closings, then that could be one of your first red flags. Tip number two, sometimes real estate agents have their mortgage licenses. Now, I'm one of them actually. I actually just recently got my mortgage license because I used to be a mortgage loan officer before I was a real estate agent almost 15 years ago. But here's one thing that I want you to think about when you're considering using a real estate agent who's also a mortgage licensed loan officer in your state. Is that person doing both things at a full-time capacity? And if they are, then I would want to warn you to be very cautious in how you tread with this person, because if they're doing a full-time job of a real estate agent and also trying to do a full-time job of a mortgage company, there could be some probabilities of inefficiencies, lack of communication, because that person is trying to be a master of both. And if they have multiple clients, and this is the way that I operate, is I have my mortgage license, but I don't necessarily operate in a full capacity of doing the work that a licensed mortgage person does. I have a partner who does all the work for us, so that way I can stay focused on the real estate side of things for our clients. So make sure you write that one down, because that one's super important. Do you use a mortgage broker or do you use a bank? And mortgage brokers are fantastic because they typically have multiple options that they can go to. And it really is just kind of based on your scenario and the scenario of your file in terms of strengths and weaknesses. Now, a majority of the time, mortgage brokers do have maybe about 3 to 4 people that they typically go to, because these 3 or 4 lenders that they utilize for your file tend to accommodate to a lot of the people's circumstances. But even with the amount of options that they have, you still might want to consider using a credit union or a bank, because there could be some specialty programs that they have that might fit you just a little bit better. So long story short, don't rule out any of your options, and make sure that you're talking to at least at the minimum 2 different types of financing lenders. One maybe being a mortgage broker and the other one being a big bank, so you can try to dictate which one works best for you. And more importantly, something that you should know is that you actually don't even have to use any of them right away. You can have both people working on your behalf, and as soon as you find a property, now you can decide which one you want to go with based on what the scenario looks like for you in terms of numbers, communication, and service. All right, we talked about major big banks, and they can be fantastic to utilize, but some of these banks like Wells Fargo, the Bank of America, and some of the Chase banks, they can also work not in your favor. And what I mean by that is some of these big banks tend to have a little bit more red tape And the red tape being is they may not accommodate to specific type of scenarios that a mortgage broker would have access to. Secondly, their process, because there's so many people in their process, it tends to be just a little bit slower. So we're not necessarily trying to knock on the big banks, but we do want you to take caution because they may have something that is not into your favor, and it's something that you need to be cautious about. All right, we're on tip number 5, and I want to make sure that you guys pay attention to this specific topic, and that is understanding points and closing costs. Do a little bit of research so that you can understand what it means to you. But what you want to do is ensure that you're educated on these specific fees because you can be essentially paying for them if you don't get the seller to pay for them on your behalf during the negotiation stage. So you want to make sure you understand all the fees. And if there is a mortgage person that works for a broker or someone that works for a bank, and they're not taking the time to really explain it to you after you've asked them to, then that could be a potential red flag. It could be that they're probably hiding something that they don't want to communicate to you. And this is something that's super imperative that you should definitely learn about before you decide which direction to take with your financing. Tip number 6, the transparency and the communication on how your lender responds to your schedule and your expectations is absolutely important. I've had so many scenarios in the past where I've gotten people that were a little bit disgruntled because they didn't know what was expected in terms of the standard of communication and responsiveness and transparency from a lender. They can always feel that something's kind of off, but again, they have nothing to compare it to because they're not in this profession to understand what's great and what's not. So as soon as you feel something in your gut that something is off and you're not getting the type of responsiveness and transparency you need, then it's probably a sign that you should be looking for someone that can communicate to your expectations, someone that can accommodate to your schedule as well. And if you think about this, some of us, we don't work the 9 to 5s. Sometimes we need to talk to our mortgage professional in the evenings, or it could be vice versa. So one of the questions you need to ask a mortgage person is their availability based on your schedule and what your expectation is, because this can make the difference between you being happy with the service and the experience or you being just disgruntled and frustrated. So make sure that you ask that question. Last but not least, make sure you take the time to educate yourself. Seek different information like this video or other videos similar to this, or maybe even attend a home buyer education class so that you can get a better understanding of the mortgage process and that experience, because it's not always easy. There is a process to this from the time that you get pre-approved to the time that you go under contract. So much is expected of you. And sometimes it can be a little frustrated, a little overwhelming, and it can create a sense of resentment because you're not prepared for that process. So make sure that you prepare early on, understand the good and the bad of your particular circumstance, and try to build a plan so that you can resolve some of the bad things and put yourself in a better position to buy. Hopefully this video helped. Make sure you check out the rest of the videos that I have here